Hey everybody, welcome back. This book is getting really thick. We're in the last week, 6 more spreads, and I'm noticing it's getting very thick on the left side there, and the binding is starting to separate, and I will have to deal with that. But let's do a few pages first. I am thinking, as I put in the title, that I want to use up as much of the stash as we've got left as I can, because that's what we made it for. I didn't do any protection of the sheets. I just went and spread the paint right on there, and now I'm adding water and adding a couple of colors. I did have some of the tissue spread out there that I thought I might use, that it has the irregular zigzaggy kind of terracotta colored lines on it, and I thought the best background would be to have yellow behind there, but I'm not too sure at this point if I'm using that or not. I did know that I wanted to use yellow and red, so let's just go with that and see where my intuition takes me, because you know by now that sometimes I change my mind and I just go with the flow. And again, because there's no protection on this paper, the paint is getting absorbed right into the texture of that paper page. And I'll show you a close-up of that. There you go. You can see the texture of the page and it's absorbed right into there. Anyway, I'm just having fun with it because I know I will be putting some tissue and possibly collage over it. I don't like that grease. Yeah, so you see how this tissue paper, it will work over top of that. The tissue would disappear and those lines would show up on there, but it didn't seem to make sense to me anymore. So I'm scrapping that idea and going to go with something else. I did not want that green tab on this page. It didn't work. So I'm fanning out an opaque white paint on it so that only this half of the tab gets painted white. And then, so I've had in my stash for ages now this patch of red squares, and they were just always too strong on every other spread, but I just thought they would go perfectly here. Much more fun than the other one that I had lined up there. So again, it's my prerogative. It's always the artist's prerogative to change their mind, and that's exactly what I did here. So I'm giving it a good paint of matte medium, and I thought I may as well go and do the left side. By the way, that white tab is dry now. Anyway, I thought I may as well do protection on the left, even though I'm not sure if I'm putting anything there or not just yet. I may as well put the matte medium all over, and it does give it a nice shiny gloss. So I'm going to glue on this because I think it's a lot of fun. It's the perfect place. So, you know, all those times I brought it out and changed my mind, I haven't wasted it. So it's funny how your stash of stuff could be there for months, even years, and then one day that little piece that you pull out is just perfect for a certain spread. So I'm liking this. It's very funky and fun and bold, playful. And I purposely kept a bit of a border on the top and top right of that page so that there's a border and that those squares pop even more. So now I'm going to take and cover over that white. I could not have done it and put yellow over top of the green. It wouldn't have worked. And since the yellow was so bright, I thought I'll put a little bit of this fluid white paint to tone it down a little bit and also to make it more opaque. And I'm just trying to make that tab make sense now with this spread. And I'm using my fingers to smudge away. And I'll put a little bit of the red there as well. May as well have fun with the last tab in the book. There are no rules. Whatever my heart says I should do. Smudge, smudge, smudge. I'm trying to balance the top right with the bottom left. So in adding this red, and I thought, let's just add a few dots and make it really funky. But now what I'm doing is dabbing it and pressing a little bit so that it gets that red right into the seam of that tab, but it also gives the impression of fuzzy squares in the bottom left that kind of work with the top right spread. And there's lots of room on the left page there to write a quote if I want at some point down the road, but those kind of match with what's happening down there, and it balances the page. The yellow flows throughout, and I'm liking that. For now, that's good enough. The seam's getting really exposed in the middle, so I thought I've got to put some tape down there. The problem is I've been doing quite a few spreads with a lot of water, and it's just loosened up that binding. It's not the most expensive book in the world. The binding's not going to last forever, but that's okay. This is just a little, it's just paper. It's just a little paper book. Lesson learned. It did come in a set of 3 books. So what I've learned from doing this first book, I can apply to the next one and perhaps not make the pages as thick in the next book. So everything happens for a reason. I'm trying something different. I thought I want a blue page, and I thought, let's have fun and do something different. Just do blue mark making with blue paint and make it very random. I still don't know at this point what I'm doing. I'm just totally flying by the seat of my pants. I did want to balance a little more of the blue in the top left to balance the bottom right. I'm literally thinking about this second by second and no further. But I kind of like what's happening. Now you can see the binding in the middle is starting to separate, but I'll deal with that after this. And because the left side of the book is so thick, it's hard to keep that page open. So I'm bringing out the opaque white paint again. And I'm just, this is a technique you may have seen if you've watched some of my videos on my 8x8-inch art journal book. Sometimes I'll put a strong color underneath, then I will paint a big swath of white. You might be thinking, what on earth am I doing? But I have a plan. So stick with me. Trust me. I hope you trust me by now that I'm making some good decisions. Unfortunately, there was a little bit of yellow in the middle of that binding, and it got on the brush and it made the white yellow, so I had to dab that away. Now I'm using the paint spreader, and that's got something on it, so it didn't spread very well. The whole idea is, and if I had a business card or something like that, I could use it. The whole idea is to just put the white on there and then flatten it. And now I'm purposely scraping into it with a toothpick so that I can reveal the blue paint that was underneath. I didn't like that, so I'm giving it another try. And you can do that while it's still wet. I still don't know for sure what I'm going to do, and when I dabbed that to show you left versus right, it interrupted that nice flat bit of paint, so I kind of wrecked it. Now I have to go in there and do it again. And each time I'm scraping, I'm making a bigger pile of white paint in and around the scrape, so I'm making a bit of a thick, muddy mess in the middle there. But this is one of those examples where Joan makes a mistake, watch Joan fix it. Gave it a good blow dry because that was quite wet, quite thick. Still not too sure what I'm going to do, but I thought, okay, spray a little water and add some more blue. Using my favorite paintbrush. It's quite wet, so even though it looks splotchy there, it will settle a little bit as it flattens out and dries. So it's looking like another cloudy day, isn't it? But that's not what I was thinking when I did this. But looking at it now, I'm seeing it as a cloudy sky, but that's okay. I've already done that. So I'm trying to enhance some of the scrape marks because it turned into such a mess. And I decided, since I do like revealing circles, I thought, let's just enhance some circles that I see there. And I'm just scraping away some of the excess white paint that kind of bunched up. It's fun, it's different. Again, I'm trying to show you different techniques, so this is just another technique that I wanted to remind you can do. It's a little bit thick and bumpy there, but c'est la vie. Still trying to decide where I'm taking this. So I guess I added that extra blue so that I could enhance the effect of a white transfer print over top. And I'm just trying to decide what works here. Those circles work, but I thought they were fighting against the left page. So I'm kind of thinking stick with that swooshy script kind of movement like that, and that I think works better on the page. So I'm going to cut that page to fit a little better. And I think that works way better. It's much more fun. The left and right sides are telling a similar story, but they're different. In Thailand, my favorite expression is same, but different. I'm still looking at other options just to be sure. I've done that a lot, so I didn't want to do that. And I decided, no, I don't know. I'm still thinking. Then I pulled that one out, and it really is one of my favorite. And as soon as I put that down, I knew, and I can see it now as I talk over this, that really is by far the best choice. It really, really makes the detail of that printed tissue, the blue lines show up beautifully through the transparent area, and I just think that's quite wonderful. So that's the one I'm going with. So there I was having several different plans, and I never did them. I ended up with one that just, when it happens, it happens. There it is. I hope you agree. That's the one that works the best. It's quite lovely. So I'm just giving that a good press down. And I purposely cut that page so it wouldn't go too deep into the center crease, because I knew I was having trouble with that separating and bubbling, and I knew that I'd be best to stay away from the center. So I'm giving that a really, really good dry. Unfortunately, there was a little bit from the center of gold, and it picked it up on my brush, so that white on the right there is a little bit yellowed, but I'll deal with that. And because I didn't like that rough section where I scraped with a toothpick, I thought if I put a layer or two of tissue down, two things will happen. It will give the image of or the illusion of a smoother page, and it will also sort of soften the look of that page a bit, make it a little bit more frosty looking with the tissue over it. And I like that. I like that effect. It's a little bit more dreamy. And notice on the right spread, in the left there, at the center, it disappears and gets fuzzy. So that's where the two pages meet together and they talk nicely, right there. So because some of the center is, like I said, a little bit yellowed, I thought, let's put some white paint down, get my new brush out, and touch it up a bit. So I'm brightening up that white, because I think the pattern on the right needs to be revealed a little more. So putting more white on there helps to encourage the pattern of the blue swooshies or swirlies to show up a little more, to pop a bit better. So in my mind, down the road, the right side has the detail, and the left page would be where I could do some writing in the middle and the bottom. And I edited this so that you don't see every little thing that I did, but you can see as I'm moving around the page where I'm highlighting white and where I'm not worrying about it. I'm not going to do the whole page. I don't need a lot of fresh white paint on there if it's not needed. And what I decided as well is I didn't want to have those long swooshes. I wanted to reveal those circles, those 4 circles, and get rid of some of the swoosh below and above it. And I think that helps. And again, that just gives me down the road more of a white area to write a quote, because this is a soul journal and I do like writing quotes. And again, I don't like doing it the day that I did the page. I like to do it on another day when I'm looking through and the quote that pops to mind. Today it's all about the visuals. So I've got 2 blue lines on the left and right of that page from previous paint bleeding through. So I thought, let's go with some green and blue and mask it a little bit. That was a stamp that said love, dream, and something else. So I'm thinking, I haven't done a lot of green in the book. Let's do some green. Because I do have to cover up those blue spots there that are screaming out loud. So I like that green. It's a happy green. It's a very busy print. I'm not too sure how it's going to work and play out. And again, now I'm having a problem with that inner seam. It's starting, the binding is kind of loosening almost completely at this point, and I'm having trouble pressing things down. And that's okay, I can fix things. The left side's behaving okay, but the right side's becoming a problem. This is going to be one of those lessons where I show you how to fix a very big boo-boo. And I suppose I would have been okay if I would have left this well enough alone as it is and cut the edge of the tissues off, but I just found it very, very busy. And I just, you know me, I'm always pushing the envelope, trying to go a step further. In this case, it didn't work. I didn't like it, but I can't show you how everything's perfect all the time. Sometimes you have to see that I make mistakes, and it's all about how you deal with it. So I'm not too afraid to tell you that this was a bit of a mistake, and I want you to learn from my mistakes. And you're going to make your own mistakes and learn from them as well. And as you've seen in all my videos, most of my mistakes have been happy occasions. So yes, I could have left that well enough alone. So in order to make it a little less busy, I found a couple of pieces of more solid green that I thought I'll put over top and drown out the loudness a little bit, soften it up a little. And it worked on the left there. But again, I had two problems. The biggest problem here on this day was that binding right in the middle there. It's basically, you can't see it there, but it's almost all separating. So I thought, let's put some more green on there, but I didn't like it. Things just weren't working. But I'm forging ahead just in case. I thought I've got that blue in the top right corner there, so I had a bit of a swooshy print of blue on this tissue. I thought, let's put a little swoosh up there and see how it works. But you know, even as I put it down and looking at it now, I think I don't love it, because I don't know what it leads to. I thought I could put that word dream that's very, very subtle on the left side, but because the background tissue is so busy, it's not showing up. I put it down for you, but it really doesn't show up very well. I thought perhaps I can soften that busyness by putting another layer of tissue and then put the word down. Let's just see if that makes any difference. Ever so slightly. Yeah, it's showing up a little bit as dream. And I actually don't mind that it's cloudy and kind of disappears, as dreams do. But at this point, that middle binding is a mess, so I decided, you know what, while everything's still wet, and I sped this up to save you the agony of watching it, I put a lot more matte medium on there to make it gooey, and I'm just pulling all of it away with the help of a knife. I just did not like what was happening there at all. And I thought if I try to salvage it with more paint, at this point the book is so thick that it would make it worse. So I thought I may as well start with a fresh page. So that's what I did, and I scraped away any excess tissue along the middle there, because you can see it's all pulling away anyway. That's okay, I've got some bookbinding glue and I'll fix that. So I've got a fresh page. Rather than make it thicker with tissue and all of that, let's just paint it for a complementary green. So that's my high flow acrylic green gold that I mixed with white to make it more opaque and make it brighter and softer. And that's what I'm painting all over the right. And because it's quite opaque, I can paint over that blue and cover a lot of it. So that's one way to get rid of it. And now I have to make everything make sense. So I'm just randomly pressing a little lighter with the brush and my finger, but randomly spreading it to the left as well, so that it makes sense that it's a two-page spread. But again, I apologize, that left page is getting quite thick. Some of that was sticking off, so I thought I'll pull it away and add the green there, and it works. It's kind of that patina on metal, you know how metal turns into multi multi-corrosion colors. That's what I'm trying to show there. And then I thought, well, let's just cover all of that because it's looking dirty on the left compared to the right. And it was too dry to scrape all that off. That page was a done deal. I couldn't scrape it free. So I thought, I'll fix it by adding, and because I didn't even bother taking the green off the paintbrush, I just used that to spread, which is okay. It kind of softens the green and helps it blend with the right side. So there I've got a whole different look, completely different, disaster averted. And now let's do a print on the right. So I'm pressing that down. And again, I had green on the brush, so it mixed in with the matte medium and became pale green, but kind of helps tie the two pages left and right together a little better. So here we are, night and day, two completely different things. And there I had let it dry really well, and I cut away all the excess tissue. So here's my PVA. It's a professional bookbinding glue. It's really, really strong, and it goes on white but dries clear. So I'm using that because I do like making books. I'm so sorry that when I filmed this, I couldn't tell. I was so intent on gluing the binding that I didn't know that it was off camera. So I apologize. And now that it's pressed in there, I'm trying to take the cloth of that binding. It's kind of a spine. I'm trying to press that spine, that cloth spine, against all the turned pages from previous pages so that it stays firm while it dries. And it's two-step. I'm probably going to have to leave this perched like that, and then later on I'll have to add more. I'll have to add the glue from another angle on the pages and see if I can fan it out a different way, because this doesn't look quite right. There we go. Now it's looking more like it should. The spine is nice and straight. There's my magic PVA glue. I put a healthy dose of the PVA, obviously along the spine, but also in the crease of the green of the last spread that I did. So look at how it's staying in place now. So inside that crease there, right there, I did a very healthy dose, because you saw earlier how it pulled away quite badly, and it dried clear, so I'm happy. So I don't want to do too much more with matte medium on here, so I pulled out a tissue that had "Live" stamped on it from a stencil, and rather than add a bunch of sticky matte medium, I'm using my glue stick. But you have to be careful, because using a glue stick on tissue paper, the paper's quite vulnerable and it gets soft, and as you can see, it wants to fall apart. So you don't press over the same area twice. You keep moving around, and you'll get better at that. You'll figure it out. Part of that L came off of it, and I will add that later. I just felt like I wanted to put something, instead of keeping this just green with not much happening, I wanted to do something with this spread. So I'm pressing it down quite firmly, and I'm adding that little bit from the L because it matters. And I have a dot there for the eye, and I haven't forgotten that either. It's sitting there waiting. It's hard to do this when you've got sticky fingers. There's my dot. And the only thing I can do with that is press it on the tip of the glue stick and get the glue on it that way, and then press it down in place. So there you go. So I'm giving it an extra little press along the tissue there in the center, and just to keep it in place. I'm not loving the edge of the tissue paper there, but I will deal with that in a little bit. I want to deal with the right side. You see there's some subtle print there from the tissue paper there, that pattern, and it's just a little more subtle than I want. And so I'm going to use a Posca pen and highlight some of the white areas, and I've edited this so that it speeds it up for you, but you get the idea. I'm And it's hard to see because it's so subtle, but I'm trying wherever I can to bring out some of the white pattern that makes sense to me. This is the part I like. You know, I like this part because it's where I get really lost in the moment and I don't think about anything. So this is really good mindfulness. One of my favorite stages of each of my paintings. So I'm just bringing out the things that make sense, and otherwise I'm not worrying about getting everything. And it's not even as if that image makes sense with the word live, but it is what it is, and you can use your imagination. So now I'm taking that green, and I don't want it really, what I don't want to do is cover up that beautiful grain, that kind of texture of like a weave, a basket weave behind the word live. I don't want to deter from that too much, but I want to, twofold. I want to get rid of the image of the edge of that paper there, and I want to tie it in a little bit with the bright green on the right. So even though this looks really strong, I'm painting it on, and then I'm going to get I'm going to get a tissue paper there, a Kleenex I mean, and dab it with water, spray it with water, and then I will dab at the paint so that I'm removing some of it. So you can see it makes a bit of a difference. So I'm adding that bright green, but in a very subtle way, and I'm trying not to cover up the texture of the page beneath it, because I think that texture is wonderful. I'm not going to do it everywhere either. It's just, and again, I'm constantly wiping and even rubbing a little bit harder there so that I can really reveal that texture underneath. And so I'm enhancing the word live, but I'm trying to keep the integrity of the whole page. So this is really sped up for you to not get you too bored. There we go. I like it. Disaster averted. I'm sorry I put you through all of that, but it is a lesson learned, and I hope you've learned from my mistake. Things happen. But again, it's just a little journal book. It's just on paper. And I think that I've turned it around. The only thing I have to do now is I'm touching up a little bit of the white areas there that had some green on it. That's it. I like it. I'm happy about it now. So getting down to the wire here, what have I got left to do? I've got 3 spreads, and I've pulled a bit more from the stash. I put away some of the colored tissue papers because I'm kind of finished with them and I didn't really like what I had left. I had that one bit there that was a homemade stencil that I had made a few months back, and I did that on my Gelli plate. So I thought I'm going to use that and see what, I don't know why I'm using it. I don't know what the theme will be for the page yet, but I am starting by putting a protective layer of tape because, as I know now, it bleeds through that center seam quite a bit. I've protected each page as well, and I've got a clip down on the left side of the book because it's getting so thick that it wants to keep opening up. I've pulled out a brand new bottle of high flow acrylic Indian yellow. I love it, and I thought that would be a nice color to use as a backdrop for that red tissue print. And as you could see, I didn't put any marks on the page. I didn't do any matte medium to protect the paper. I wanted to let the paper soak into the surface of the paper like I did on one of the other ones that I showed you. And I just wanted less layers of matte medium this time. So I'm just spreading that around, trying not to put too much in the middle seam, and not trying to control it too much. Give it a good dry. So I know I'm putting this stencil on there, but I don't know 100% where that will take us, but it's a start. It's just got a happy vibe to me, this stencil. I quite like it. It's almost like a braided ribbon coming apart. So now I'm putting the layer of matte medium. So this is the very first layer of matte medium, which is good. I'm trying to keep it down to a minimum because the pages are getting so thick, the book's getting so thick. just for something different. And I do like the surface of the, how that gold has gone into the paper, the interest in the surface of the paper. So I'm going to glue this down, and I'm going to use the paint spreader. I have the wide one to hold it firm into that center crease. Otherwise, it'll bubble. And the paint spreader makes a good spreader for spreading out the transferred tissue paper onto this as well. And then extra little glue. Somebody had asked me recently which kind of tissue I use, and I did say in my comments, but I will remind you that, and I was happy for her comment, there are two types of tissue papers. There's the acid-free, and I'm not too sure there's another one, I think it's called wet resistance or something tissue. I don't know if I've used that before. I'm just using the cheap stuff you can get at the dollar store, the kind that stores would use in packaging to either throw in a gift bag or to wrap a garment that you've had. You know, that kind of, those big sheets of tissue paper that they use. I like using that cheap stuff because it dissolves quite readily when you apply it with matte medium. Whereas when I've used the acid-free one, it was way too stiff, isn't quite the right word, but it seemed more wax-like. And I didn't like how it did not dissolve onto the paper as much as this tissue does. So I was very happy that that person asked me the question, and I'm happy to share it with you here because I'm sure she's not the first to think about it. So I appreciate any of your comments because it helps me get better, helps you understand this process. I'm happy to share. So I wanted to continue the red of that image to the left edge of the page. So that's why I added some of that red onto it. And then I dabbed it away with tissue because I wanted to make it a little bit distressed. And then I thought I'll add a little more and make that a circle. Just trying to figure out what that whole image means, and my instinct was to make it like a circle. And I'm just taking a paper towel and I'm pressing straight down and pressing hard and then pulling it straight up. So I quite like that distressed effect. You might think, well, why would you put the paint on just to lift it off? But I'm not lifting all of it. I'm leaving, every time I do that, it leaves more character on the surface of that paper, which would be really hard to paint on deliberately. It's just something that comes when you put paint down and then take it away. It's what's revealed. I'm putting a little more of the yellow in the right there to cover. It's hard to tell unless you look right in there, but all I'm doing is going over the edge of the tissue paper. And again, because I'm using this kind of cheap tissue paper, it blends, it dissolves quite readily. And when I do paint over the edges of it, it seems to work quite well. So I would highly recommend not using any tissue paper that's too stiff or waxy because it's quite hard and it's almost more slippery. So even when you do a gel print over it, it's a little more slippery. I just personally, I know a lot of people use it and that's okay, but for my purposes here, I don't enjoy it as much. Give this a good blow dry. I'm still thinking as I blow dry, which I've sped up, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I didn't like those two red spots of the circle. I quite liked where I distressed it. So what I'm going to do, you might think, well, why are you putting white? But if I was to put a lighter color over top there, it's too dark and it would show up still as dark. So if I put a layer of white where I find the image is too dark, then I can put paint back over the white and it'll come up brighter and lighter. So I also didn't like how that red went and made that circle. I kind of like keeping this whole image look like a top thread and a bottom thread. So I got rid of that part in between the two, and plus I'm going over the darkest part of that circle. And what I'm doing, if you can see, is I'm fanning it out and trying to do it quite dry. The paintbrush isn't really wet. I'm kind of putting it on randomly and then I'm smudging it with my finger to give a real smudgy effect. I didn't want strong, stark lines. And then I gave it a good blow dry. Believe me, this was dry before I added more. And now you can see when I add that Indian yellow back over top, it's staying bright and yellow and not blending with the red that was there. So that's a trick I do quite often. If I don't like a dark, moody area, I'll paint white over it and then I'll reapply. Still not sure that I'm loving that, but I'm giving it a good blow dry and I'm thinking about everything as I dry. So now I've decided, because now it's good and dry, I couldn't do this earlier, but because it's dry, now I can add more red. And what I'm trying to do is bring that ribbon, that band of ribbon, up towards the top left, but keep it separate from the bottom ribbon. And then when it gets to the part where I'm at there at the top, I'm kind of dabbing at it to make it distressed again. So again, I'm just bringing those two bands of ribbon, top and bottom, back over to the left, and there's definitely a separation between them now. Because as I was doing this, as I was blow drying it actually, an instinct came to me, almost like a voice in my head, and I knew what I was going to do. What I want to do is treat that as two bands, two ribbons, and I want to write a saying on the top and the bottom one. And in order to do that, I needed to make it look like two bands, two ribbons, and then, like I say, I'm just distressing it a little. So I knew at this point, and that doesn't always happen, but I just knew that that's what I want to do. Now what I'm going to do, because I kind of want to soften the edge on the right side, so I'm adding in a container some matte medium with just a smidgen of white paint so that I can make a very semi-transparent white, almost completely transparent with just a hint of white. And I'm going to paint that right page so that I soften it a little bit. Now you might not have liked that, you might wonder, and again I did that because I kind of didn't know for sure if I was going to add some white in the bottom right corner, and so this would be a good transition. But this is what I did, like it or not, and it will dry a little more transparent than it shows right now. And I didn't like that little brush because it was leaving real brush strokes, so you'll see that I'm going to use my very favorite brush here, which is my finger. And I'm just pressing lightly so that I don't spread it too much. It keeps it floating on the top. So I brought out two Posca pens in colors that I think work well with this spread. So this is not a quote. This is words that popped into my head as I was blow drying this spread. So let's go with it. And this is something I actually live by. If you don't love your life, and a lot of people don't, and I don't always love my life either, but if you don't love your life, then you actually have the power, to sit down one day and say, I'm not liking what's happening here, so what will make me happy? So my philosophy is, if you don't love your life, then make it what you do love. I hope that's okay with you, but that's just something I do believe. We do have the power to change our life and, find the things we love to do. And doing these art journal books is something I really, really do love to do. It empowers me. It gives me peace and happiness. I hope it does for you. On second thought, I decided that didn't show up very well in the pink, so I took the yellow Posca pen and went over everything, and I think that's really cheerful and bright and very clear. So on to the second last one. We're getting down to the wire, people. That's okay, I bought a set of 3, so I can keep making these. I hope you do too. So I thought, since I keep showing those little bits of black, let's do a spread with some of that. I did that in the first week, I believe, and I quite enjoyed the results. I don't like to use for my soul journal a lot of black, but I don't mind little hits of it. So I pulled out just one single strip, and it's kind of a wonky strip, and I like that. I've sped this up because I just want to show you my thought process and not miss anything. I didn't like too much. I didn't end up doing that, but I'm showing you how I'm thinking about it as I lay the things down. I prefer this other piece, and I tore away that one big dot on the right because I wanted a little more subtle. I didn't want heavy, heavy lines there. So that's the cheap tissue that I usually use. But in this stash, I had these dashed lines that I used on the acid-free tissue. I don't know if it's also the same as wet strength tissue, but I just want to show you the difference of what happens here. And when I put that down, I forgot it was on the acid-free tissue, but I'll show you what happens between the two. So I'll start with the top section. And I'll paste that one down. And notice how it behaves well. Nothing spreads, nothing does. Everything is as it was on the tissue after I press it down with the brush and the matte medium. So I like that. I like the result. It stays as it is. No surprises. I like this wonky line. I'm pressing down. Very first thing I do is press it into that crease and then hold it in place and spread it with my other finger. And if I would have left well enough alone here, that would have been okay. And I didn't realize this was on the tissue I don't like. So that plus this new piece I'm putting down, they're both from the acid-free tissue. And I don't know if you can tell there, but on the line that I had put down just before this, it spread black a little bit from the brush. And this would have been fine if I would have left it as well, but I didn't really realize what I was dealing with, and I kept pressing another layer, another coating with another spread, and with my fingers, and I just made a mess. So that's one reason why I don't like the acid-free, people, because when you do gel printing with it, it's kind of a slippery surface, and clearly the paint doesn't adhere to it and get absorbed into it as much, floats on the surface, and so that gave me a mess. So I thought I had it all thrown away, but I am not going to use any more of those tissues. So here we go. I'm looking for the last spread, and I'm thinking, what could I do? In fact, actually, no, this is still the second last spread, but I saw that I had done a similar technique earlier. I don't want to do the red and orange again. I want to do blue, but I was just taking a look and seeing the effect of not a lot of black and then some color. So I'm not trying to copy it, but it gave me inspiration. I have not done anything to the surface of the paper other than that bit of matte medium. I didn't add any more water. And I got to remember to protect the page underneath. So I'm just being quite random here. I'm not trying to, I'm not sure where I'm going with this yet. I'm not trying to contrive it though. I'm trying to just kind of hold the brush loosely at the tip. And that's a good way of doing it when you want to be organic and loose, because then you can't force things as much. So another little trick, people. For abstracts and for mixed media and intuitive painting, that's a really good way to use a brush. Just hold it by the tip. So I gave that a spray, and I'm dabbing into the center seam for sure, because it does bleed through, and I've probably already done damage to the one behind because I did not put tape in the seam, but that's okay. I'll deal with that if it happens. Since the left side of the book is so thick, I had to prop up the right side with that painter's tape just to bring it up to a better level so that the paint doesn't spread too much in the wrong way. So I just keep dabbing it in the middle to keep it under control. And I started using the hairdryer, and it kind of spread the paint around a bit, which isn't bad. But I try to dab away a little bit because I wanted a very subtle blue in this. I didn't want a really strong color. I gave it a good blow dry, and there's how it bled through. But that's okay. So I got out some matte medium again in that container and threw just a smidgen of the white paint because you know me, I like to make this semi-transparent white. I gave it a really good blend, and I'm spreading it, as you can see, over most of the spread, but I sped this up so that I speed up the length of this video, but I wanted you to see where I move the paint around. I pressed extremely lightly. It's a very long bristled paintbrush, so if you hold it lightly, it's a really good one to use to spread paint around because it's so soft. And what I'm doing now is dabbing the paint in certain areas because I want it to just sit where it is and then settle. And I gave a good coating over the bottom right because of that smudge accident that happened. So I wanted it to be very, very dry, white on the bottom. And I let that air dry. And now now that it's dry, I'm just spreading a little bit of water on the bottom right. And I want to use some of that green right from the bottle. I didn't want the kind that I mixed previously with white because it's too opaque. I wanted this to be transparent, because that's my favorite reason why I like to use that color. And I'm just encouraging it lightly with my finger, very, very softly encouraging it. And make sure you dab all that because it'll bleed through. And I'm only holding down, it looks like it's hard to know what I'm doing there, but I'm using my left hand to hold the page down while I dabbed. And I like how it's spreading a little bit there. I'm letting the ink kind of spread and do what it wants to without me contriving it. And then because of that, I let it air dry. Otherwise, I would have blown it out of shape. Now it's good and dry. And the only thing I want to do now is enhance a bit of the black. The right side of the page is so strong because of that green. So I just wanted to bring the eye over to the left by enhancing just very subtly some of the black. And the Posca pen seemed dry, but if you press down on a paper, you can reactivate and send the ink down to the tip. So I'm not going to do this on all of the black because I don't want this to be about black. I want it to be an accent, but I like how stark and strong that is. I love black as an accent with white, this blue, and this green. I think it's very, very striking. And it's kind of soulful colors to me, very spiritual colors. So I kind of like that I'm ending the book with these kinds of colors. I'm happy with that. Really happy. There's room for a quote. And because it bled through to the back, the blue and the green, this is the very last spread. The left is the last page and the right is the cover. I'm bringing out the last little bit of some of my printed tissues, never used them. I kept bringing those circles out and I never used them. And then I saw this one. And this is another one that I had made a couple of months ago from a stencil I made by myself. And this was the mask part of the stencil that I used on the Gelli pad to make that shape. And it looks like a chain link, kind of a chain link. So I quite like it. And there's a lot of white on the chains. The links are white, so I thought, okay, let's put some strong color on the background, but not too strong and not everywhere. I wanted this to be, again, quite organic. And I know that there's a lot of white in that chain print, but I don't mind a little bit of the white blending in with the chain once I glue this down. So in some areas you see the blue, I keep it quite thick. And in some areas, I'm keeping it subtle. I'm kind of borrowing from the one area with my finger to use it to spread to the left. But again, I'm just dabbing ever so lightly, because I want this to be a kind of a cloudy effect. Since this is the very last spread, I wanted it to be very spiritual. I found it was a good way of closing this book, because the whole thing has been an amazing spiritual journey for me. I hope for you as well when you do yours. And I couldn't be happier with what I've decided to do at the end. I really feel like this is just happy, bright, cheerful, and spiritual. Everything about it makes my heart sing, and I'm happy to end my book with it. But this isn't the end of our journey, people. Stick with me, because I do paint for my soul, and that is my whole purpose of this channel, and you'll see more of me, sometimes with the tiny books, sometimes with larger. I hope you learned a lot in this one. I tried to show you every little trick I had. I have to save some of it for the next one. So I'm just dabbing away a little bit, keeping it cloudy. And then I gave it a good dry. So here's that lovely mask, this lovely print. Maybe one video I'll show you how to make those. Why not? I'd like to empower you to do everything. Why buy stencils when you can make them? And I'm purposely tearing this, not cutting it, because I want this to be a rough edge, because even the edges of the paint on those links are kind of rough and distressed. So by tearing this instead of cutting is congruent with the stencil. So because I'm going to cover a good part of this spread, I'm giving a good part of this spread the matte medium. In fact, I'm just doing all of it. Place that down. And then the first thing again I have to do is secure the inner seam. And then spread it out. Just look at the magic. I just love doing that. Look how happy those colors are. And it's funny because when I did this mask, I didn't think of it as a chain. And again, I think because this is how I'm ending this first little tiny book journal, to me, the chain reminds me of the links of events that happened in my life. And it all brought me to where I am today. And I just couldn't be more delighted with having this as the finale. It means a lot to me. It's got a hidden purpose without putting any writing. It just sums everything up in my life. I am here today, and I am very happy with my life. I've had a lot of bad things happen to me, but I've dealt with it by having my escape. I'm just very fortunate that I'm an artist and I have that escape, and I'm trying to empower you. You don't have to be an artist. You don't have to know how to draw. I'm trying to teach you how to be an artist by making these things, getting lost in the moment, even if you don't have the skills, because believe me, at the end of this, you should have some good skills by now to make some amazing things. I'm just taking the white and touching it up a bit so that I could bring the eye right to the edge of the paper there. I did a couple of dabs, and I'm using my finger to spread to keep it very subtle, just like the print is. And then I got out some of the green and dabbed a little just to get rid of some of the tissue paper that was showing up. Oh, I just love it. Love it. It just does so much for me to see this. There are so many days where I could look at this and get lost in it and think of nothing but happy. And I choose to think happy in the moment and look forward. Here it is on my shelf now, next to my Buddha, in a place of honor. And I just think it looks amazing on a shelf like that. So keep it open like that when you've got your book. Put it somewhere, display it. Be proud. Namaste.